Hello, I'm Rebecca Flaherty, and in today's Procreate tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a seamless painterly background gradient that looks like a beautiful sunset sky. This is perfect for beginners, and the best part is you can reuse it as a base for so many different patterns. I'll also show you how to add texture with one of Procreate's default brushes using blend modes, and we'll go over a few tips for choosing dreamy colour combos and using the curves adjustment tool to really make your colours pop. I've got two freebies for you with this tutorial. You can grab the colour palette that I've used plus the textured overlay, and they're both over in the Pattern Maker's Toolkit. Let's jump in. First of all, we're going to create our canvas. I'm using a 3600 pixels or 12-inch canvas as per usual, as it's a perfect size for spoonflower, and also because 12 likes to divide into lots of other numbers, which is handy if you're making geometric patterns. So to do that, you come out into your gallery, tap on the plus, and you can either create a new canvas here by putting 3600 pixels in both of these, and we want 300 dpi, and color profile you want to use an RGB and this one here. So we can click create, and this is the canvas we're going to be using. If you've seen my other pattern tutorials, you know I love using the Pattern Maker canvas, which you can grab from my Etsy shop, links below. That one is also 3600 pixels, so you can use this background in your patterns that you make with that too. But if you're just here for the gradient background, any square canvas will work just fine. Now that we have our canvas set up, the next job is to pick our colours. Let's talk colour. I'm going for a sunset inspired palette, so think soft pinks, warm peaches and dreamy purples. You can use any colour you like as a starting point for your background, but for the best results, the colours you pick to go with it shouldn't be quite so random. When picking colours, try using analogous colours. That's colours that sit next to each other on the colour wheel for a smooth, natural blend. If you choose a pink and a purple, they're going to blend nicely into each other with beautiful shades in between. But if you picked a pink and a green, two colours that are opposite on the colour wheel, you're going to get a muddy grey shade where one colour blends into the other. So Procreate makes that easy for us. We can use the Harmony tab on the colour palette here. So I've tapped on my colour palette, and I'm going to tap on the Harmony tab at the bottom. Up here where it says analogous, if yours doesn't say that, tap on that and you can choose between different colour schemes up here. So for this one, we want it set to analogous. And any colour we pick down here is going to pick two other colours that will work nicely with it. So if we've got pick a pink here, it's going to give us a purple and then a more orangey peach. You could try it with the green. You can also use any colours in your palette, and that will pick two nice shades to go with them. So I'm going to go for this kind of shade here. Once you've got your three colours picked, add them to a new palette so that you don't lose track of them. So I'll tap on create new palette, and we'll go on Harmony down here, and I'm going to add this one, tap on this one, and then this one here. And then that makes it easier to switch between the three colours, because sometimes if you tap on one colour and then you tap on another one, it doesn't always go back to quite the same place. So once you've got your colour palettes there, we are ready to start drawing. Now for the fun part, let's build the gradient. So we're going to start on a new layer, and we're actually going to fill it with white to start with. So tap on your disc, double tap in this area here, and that's going to snap to a pure white. Then we're going to fill this layer with white. Won't look any different because our background is white, but we've got that white background layer there. This is so we've got a fully opaque layer in a neutral colour to work on. Then we're going to use the soft airbrush here. So this is in Procreate's default airbrushing set, and we're going to use the soft brush here. I've got my brush size set to 30%, and I've also reduced the opacity to 60%. You can experiment with different brush sizes and different opacities depending on what canvas size you're using, and also depending on how intense you want it to be. I'm going with 60% for my opacity to get a more subtle effect and gentle transition between the colours. Again, experiment with these settings to see what other effects you can get. So then we're just going to start laying down these colours here. So we're just going to scribble over like this. Some places you'll end up pressing harder than others, and you can build up the colour by just adding more passes with the colour you've chosen. So we're just going to add blobs of these colours. Overlap your colours slightly so they blend together nicely, and you can build up the intensity with more passes of the brush. Take your time here, there's no rush. The more gradual the transitions, the dreamier it's going to look. And you can also go back in with some white if you want to reduce the intensity a little. Now that we have a base, we're going to make this tile seamless. This means that whatever is on this edge needs to blend perfectly into whatever's on this edge. If you imagine there was a seam down the middle here, imagine this is where it ended. Everything here just flows seamlessly, and that's the effect that we need on the edges. So this is how we're going to do that. We're going to duplicate this layer by swiping to the left and tapping duplicate. Then we're going to tap transform, and down here on snapping you want to have snapping and magnetics both turned on and both of these sliders all the way up. And then we're going to drag one copy of this over to this edge. And we're going to drag this over here, and you should see orange lines down the edge of the canvas along the top and down the middle, and that tells you it's snapped perfectly to this edge here. We can tap on our layers, and you can see here, this is what I meant. If you imagine a seam down the middle, they need to flow one into the other. So we tap on the one underneath now, tap transform again, and then we're going to do the same, dragging this over to the right. And then once that's in the right place and you can see all those orange lines there, you can tap off that. So now we have got this seam down the middle. This is what was on the edges of the tile, and now brought into the middle, and we can see obviously they don't flow one into the other. But what is on the edges now is seamless because this is what was in the middle. You can see where we've got this purple bit here, that matches up with that purple bit there, and there's kind of a lighter bit there which matches up with what's there. So the edges of this tile, these are now seamless, and we've brought the previous edges into the middle so that we can work on those. We can pinch these two together to put them all onto one layer, and then what we do, we just go back in with our airbrush and redo the bit in the middle. So we can draw back in over the top of this, go back in with the white if you need to lighten it as well. And as we're doing this, we're just going to try and work on the middle section of the tile. Try not to draw over the edges when you're doing this. Anytime you draw over one of these edges, you're going to be making another part that's got to be brought in the middle and blended out. So just work in the middle from now on, and just keep going in with these colours, just blending until you can't see a line down here in the middle. So now this part in the middle is looking pretty seamless. If it starts to look too dark, you can go back in with the white. There we go. So if I zoom in here, you can see this part, there's no seam down the middle there. So now what we need to do is bring this part, the top and bottom seams, we can bring those into the middle and work on that. So we're going to duplicate this again, tap transform, and snap this into the middle there. You see all those lovely orange lines telling us it's in the right place. And then the one underneath, tap transform on that and bring this up here. And then you can pinch those together. And then now this seam and that seam match up, and what's in the middle doesn't. And we just repeat that again, going in and blending these. So we've got a soft brush still, and we'll just go in with these colours. Again, making sure we don't go over the edges. Just building up this part in the middle and blending it out there. And then once this part looks seamless, you see that's all looking good there. We repeat that again, so now we bring these edges back into the middle and just alternate it, so you bring the vertical ones into the middle and then you do the horizontal ones the next time. So we did the horizontal, so now we do the vertical ones again. So we duplicate this and bring these into the middle, taking really good care to make sure that we've got those orange lines there and that we're snapping. And from now on, each time you bring it into the middle, it should be like less and less that you have to work on here. So again, with the soft brush, just gonna add some more into the middle here. And now that's looking pretty seamless there. So we did the vertical ones, so now we bring these horizontal ones into the middle this time. So we duplicate, tap transform, snap this down there, and then this one, bring that up, and hopefully we should start to see that we don't actually have any blending to do. So this one is looking all right in the middle there. There's no seams down there. We can pinch those together and then we'll repeat that, bringing these ones into the middle. It's still looking okay. Do it one last time. Although I'm doing this quite quickly, you do really have to be careful that you are snapping this perfectly, otherwise you will start to see like white lines down the middle. That is all looking good now. So keep doing that offsetting until you have no more seams in the middle. And then that is the first part of this ombre gradient. This is now a fully seamless tile, and this would be ready to use in your surface pattern designs. I want to show you how to take this one step further and add some texture and more variation in colour to this. So we're going to do that by adding a layer above. I'm going to go to our brushes, artistic set, the Aurora brush there. And I'm going to go to my colours, and I'm going to double tap here, and that's going to give me a 50% grey colour. And then making sure I'm on this new layer here, I'm going to scribble over the top with this grey like that, and that's going to look absolutely awful and bonkers to start with. I'm going to stick to the middle, not going over the edges, but I will go off the edges of these opposite corners because that will allow us to move it. So don't panic, this does look weird. What I'm going to do, I'm going to tap on this N here, and that's going to bring up our blend modes, and I'm going to change the blend mode on this. You'll see magic things start to happen as we scroll through these. I'm going to change it to overlay, and if I zoom in there, you can see it adds this really subtle variation in texture there. So that's the look that we're going for. I'm going to change it back to normal because it's easier to work with when we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. As long as I've gone off the edges in these two corners, we can duplicate this, tap transform, grab the whole canvas, and we're going to do the same thing as we did before. So snap this over to this side, and then this one over to here, making sure always that you've got these orange lines there. Pinch those together, and then we can go back in and make this part seamless in the middle. You don't have to go over the whole thing, it's okay to have like a few little gaps there. Then once the middle part is blended, we duplicate this layer again, tap transform, and then we sort out the top and bottom seams. So bring this one down to there, and then snap this one up to there, pinch those together, and then we fill in the middle part again, making sure as you zoom in here that it's covering that harsh right angle there. Then one last bit to do is these there. So we duplicate this, tap transform, snap that to the edge, and then do the same with this one. And then we've just got the middle there to do. And then this too is now also seamless. Let's change the blend mode on this to overlay now and see how this is looking. You can see it gives a really nice subtle effect there. Once you're happy with your base layer, this one here, we can really make these colours pop now. There's two ways you can do this. One simple way is just to duplicate this layer, and you'll see that's the more times you duplicate this, the more times that's going to increase the intensity of this effect. I'm going to undo those now. Another way to do it is to use the curves tool. So I'm going to tap on the adjustments up here, the magic wand, and we're going to tap on curves. And you see this brings up this little thing down here. I'm not going to pretend that I fully understand how this works, but I do know how to use it to get the effect I want. We're going to use it to adjust effectively the brightness and contrast. So what I want to go for is kind of like an S shape. So it goes, at the moment, I've just got this straight line there. I want to make it go kind of like that sort of shape in an S. So I'm going to tap here and bring this one down a little bit. And then I'm going to tap here and bring this one up a little bit. And then this in the middle, you can then slide around until you get the effect that you like. So you could go for something, if you want like darker colours, bring it down. If you want lighter colours, you can bring it up, and then sliding to the left and right will also change things as well. So move this around until you get a contrast that you like. Then tap off that, and that's done. If I undo this and then redo it, you can see the difference. So tap undo and redo, and that's the difference that you get there, and that makes those colours really pop. And that's done that by lifting the highlights and deepening the shadows, so you get this magical glowy sky vibe. Don't go too extreme though, it is quite easy to overdo it. Now that we have our seamless background finished, we ought to do a test just to make sure this is repeating properly. So to do that, we're going to swipe down with 3 fingers and tap copy all. Then swipe down again and paste. And now that's put a flattened copy of all of that together in one layer. I'm going to hide these two, tap transform on this one, and I'm going to drag this node up here into the middle until it says 1800 pixels there. Then I'm going to duplicate this, tap transform, and snap it over to the edge here. And then we can zoom in there and just check this seam here by we show and hide this one. You want to be looking out for no white line down there. That's a good sign. And to make sure that there's no sort of jarring bits in the pattern where it doesn't meet up properly. And that's all looking okay. So pinch those two together now. Duplicate that, tap transform, and then snap that one down there. And then pan along this line, just checking again, no white line there. And that all of they're not really motifs because it's a texture, but all of your motifs line up there. There we go. And that is how the pattern looks in repeat. A dreamy, seamless, ombre, painterly gradient, I don't really know which word best describes this, but a background texture that you can use again and again in all kinds of patterns. If you want to use this background in a pattern you've made using my pattern maker canvas, you can either just make this whole thing directly in your pattern maker canvas file, or you can hide this. Let's show these ones again. You can swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all, and then come out to the gallery, find a pattern that you want to add it to. So I've got some in here. You could try adding it to, let's add it to this one here. So come down underneath your pattern, swipe down with 3 fingers, and then tap paste. And that's going to add it there as a background. And if I hide these, you can see how the textures in the pattern maker canvas add even more dimension to this, and also how using this instead of a plain background adds even more dimension to your designs. I hope that you have fun using backgrounds like this in your surface pattern designs, and don't forget you can find this colour palette plus the exact gradient overlay I've used here over in the Pattern Makers Toolkit. Pattern Makers Toolkit is a bit like a Patreon group, except it's all free. I send out one and only one email per month with a freebie in there to help you on your pattern making journey, as well as early access links to some of my YouTube tutorials and full access to all the assets in the resource library. Plus, members get 10% off all the canvases and brushes in my Etsy store. New for 2025, the email also has a set of seasonal prompts each month for helping you plan, illustrate and upload in advance for the key shopping dates in your print-on-demand stores like Spoonflower. If you'd like to join, just click on the link up here or in the description. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more pattern making fun every week. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you next time.